Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Vakar Puri, and I am based in Pakistan, and I'm working with TCI as Senior Programs Officer. It is my pleasure to welcome all the participants to this learning webinar on TCI Fellowship Program. I welcome all the participants who have joined us today, and we are looking forward for more participants to join soon. I thank our all eminent and amazing fellows to join the webinar as speakers. I welcome Chinta and Dorothy now, and hopefully Samuel will join in a bit. I also want to thank our senior leadership here in the room, Ms. Bhargavi and Ms. Kim Kurwan. Thank you so much for joining us. And importantly, without the support persons, a webinar is never possible. So I want to thank the support persons, captioners, international sign interpreters, translators for joining us and supporting us with this webinar. I will start by saying some of the features of this webinar. I want to share that this webinar is being recorded so that in the future and after this webinar, it can be put up on the YouTube and also shared with the larger audience who were interested and have registered but for this webinar but could not attend due to time zone differences or any other difficulties. We are providing with international sign interpretation, Spanish translation, and closed caption services. To have access to closed caption services, you can press the CC button at the bottom of your screen. And to access the translations in Spanish, please select the Spanish channel from the language section. You are also requested to keep your microphones and videos off while you are not speaking. You can turn it on, turn on your microphones and videos when you are invited to speak on the panel. I will also request you to speak on a normal pace so that the sign interpreters and the captioners can read the flow of the presentations and the statements. I will request the interpreter to flag us to slow down in case we are moving, if we are moving fast. During the event, if you have any questions to the panelists, you can leave your question in the Q&A option below, which is again in the bottom of the screen, and the panelists will respond to it directly or at the end of the session. TCI is an independent and global organization of people with psychosocial disabilities, having its presence in 50 countries. We work with our national leaders and members to enhance their movement at the national level and provide a platform to advocate with the governments for inclusion through different program approaches, microgrants, TPO support grants, fellowships. We are also supporting our national members with different opportunities to work on advocacy, to lead advocacy initiatives at the national level. TCI Fellowships. So this webinar is, the subject for this webinar is TCI Fellowships. So today we'll stick to a bit about TCI Fellowships. And so TCI Fellowships are provided to support TCI members to build their work at the national level and be of influence with movements and the policy environment. In many countries, there are no organizations of people with psychosocial disabilities, and national coalitions does not have an advocate representation from the constituency of people with psychosocial disabilities. Even if there is a representation, it is very medical in a very medical approach and is surrounded by service providers. The TCI Fellowship was started in 2017 to respond to this gap. Fellows of TCI, through a mentorship from the TCI Secretariat, learn through various and interactive opportunities to build their knowledge and capacity. They get opportunity to sharpen their communication strategies, manage programs at the national level, work with different stakeholders, and contribute to the overall advocacy of transforming communities for inclusion. The core objective of TCI Fellowship has been always to build the capacity of national members and for leading the national level program engagements and contribute to regional and global engagements as well. This approach has helped us to strengthen our movement as well as reframe the global mental health momentum to a global inclusion momentum with the guidance of the CRPD. Over the time, it has built strong capacity of national groups of people with psychosocial disabilities to carry out advocacy at the national level, which is in line with the CRPD. So without taking more time, and I will now move to our first speaker of this webinar today. I will introduce to our first speaker, Ms. Bhargavi Dawar, our Executive Director. Bhargavi started the Bapu Trust in 1999 as a survivor, first survivor-led organization in India, and among the earliest for the Asia Pacific. She served on the board of on the board of the WNUSP and played an active role during the days of CRPD drafting in legal harmonization and movement building activities in India and Asia Pacific regions. Bhargavi convened TCI in 2013, which began from 3 countries, and I'm happy to say that it has a presence in 50 countries now. And by saying this and being part of this movement, I also want to take the opportunity of thanking you for convening this unique and post-CRPD movement of people with psychosocial disabilities. Bhargavi, next 10 minutes are for you. We would like to hear from you about about the TCI program's history and specifically about the ideation of fellowship, why this program was initiated and what was the need, how the idea came in. Over to you, Bhargavi.
Thanks a lot, Papa. That was very kind of you to introduce me in this very honorable way. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can you speak again?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
All right, yeah. So it is very kind of you to introduce me in this very honorable way. Thanks a lot for this. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. It gives me the greatest of pleasure to join, the fellows. This was our, initial foray into making a program out of TCI. And I also want to, since we are in the spirit of expressing gratitude, I want to express my gratitude to the International Disability Alliance and the Bridge program particularly for bringing me to the CRPD in a very grounded and structured way in 2010, 2011. And also continuously over a period of time with the IDA leadership to have, brought in many new identified persons who can contribute enormously to our movement around the world. And Vakar has been with us for a very long time. Kim was really, I think, almost from the beginning. There are people, Yanirusa, Kim Chinta from Sri Lanka. We've all traveled together, dear people, and it has been a pleasure to see us as TCI grow from strength to strength. And the grassroots experiences for me came from the Bapu Trust to begin with, but now we have a number of people and organizations devoting to developing community grassroots movements for support systems and support services in the Asia Pacific regions, in Africa, and slowly now in Latin America, we are having a growing presence. So I'd like to thank you all for this. Fellowship is for me where leadership begins within TCI. We called ourselves, as many of you who have been with us since the beginning will know, TCI it stands for Transforming Communities for Inclusion. And Vakar talked about moving the momentum from a medical momentum to the inclusion momentum. Really proud and honored to say that worldwide today, we are recognized as the inclusion movement, not the mental health movement. Fellowship, our fellows, you are the ambassadors of this shift. You learn through the fellowship how to do this, and you also transmit this message to the outer world. Each of the fellows also, of course, have a close relationship with the secretariat, with Vakar Puri, as a mentor, and also with and gain opportunities, for example, through Bridge, through the Conference of State Parties, and some of the other occasions where we test out our voice and we start to stretch our wings and start to fly. As Vakar said, fellowships, we identify people, especially in countries where there is no presence of OPDs, of persons with psychosocial disabilities. And we identify people, like for now, for this next round, we have someone from Latin America. From Africa, we had difficulty searching out fellows. There are many leaders in the movement, but to find fellows who could identify with the social human rights paradigm was not so easy. When people come into the movement, they have doubts about identity. Recently, I had a quarrel with someone who was saying that your movement is confused. There are some people who call themselves mentally ill, and there are some of you who say you're persons with psychosocial disabilities. And my response to them is, yes, please don't confuse us. We are with the CRPD. And it is you who come in with your medicines and with your hospitals to say that you guys are mentally ill people. So please step back. Let us allow us the space to define ourselves. It is you who is confusing us. So the fellows get that opportunity to sink into their personal stories, into their lived experiences, to expose themselves to the conventional rights of persons with identities, persons with disabilities, and then reclaim their identities in the way that they choose. And it is no surprise that once they are part of TCI as an inclusion movement, they choose the identity on the side of human rights than on the medical side. So this was one big opportunity to also learn and give thought to stretch and flex, to do some studies, to experiment with networks, to quarrel if necessary, to dialogue, to establish new arguments, new declarations. We had the Addis Declaration from one of our fellows in East Africa, and to find one's areas of interest in advocacy for inclusion. As I mentioned, there are leaders like Kim, Yanirosa, they are all senior leaders who never had the opportunity to amplify their voice and throw it out to the larger world. The fellowship gives them, Kim has been involved in the highest form of advocacy at the national level. She has been able to influence the Senate, the parliamentarians, and all of them. Really honored to have you join us today, Kim. So for senior fellows, the fellowship does offer some higher level opportunities as well. So I will stop here, and thank you so much, Vakar, for starting off our platform for discussion today on a note of honoring our leaders, honoring our own history, honoring each other, and really talking about the fellowship, which is a small initiative, but really a precious one. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bhargavi, for this wonderful remarks. Wonderful remarks. Thank you so much. And I really want to thank your leadership for initiating and mentoring us here below, for taking such initiatives forward in different countries and regions and communities. The points which you mentioned about reframing from the medical model to the social model, I think it's super important that we keep emphasizing on this, because even there are like still so many countries where this issue is still a huge issue that people see as from the medical perspective. And like, for example, whenever we talk about persons with psychosocial disabilities, they start talking about, or mental health, they talk about they always take the discussion towards the Ministry of Health, medications and service providers, psychiatrists, institutionalization. So I think it's still super important that we keep moving with this momentum, and hopefully, inshallah, we will be doing the best in the coming future. So now I will. So TCI recently got registered, and we conducted our first General Assembly in April 2022 in Bangkok. And during the General Assembly, TCI elected its first board members. As Bhargavi mentioned a lot about Kim right now, so I will now invite Ms. Kirwan Tingtong, we call her Kim, from Living Association Thailand. Living Association is one of the founding members of TCI, and Kim is now serving as a secretary in TCI. She has given many decades to build a culture of community and recovery for people with psychosocial disabilities in Thailand. Kim is also a trainer for peer support, human rights, citizenship. Kim oversees a CRPD compliant disability service center for people with psychosocial disabilities in Thailand and was one of the first fellows of TCI cohort in 2018. Kim, I now invite you to give your remarks for next 7 to 8 minutes as a former TCI fellow and share with us about your journey. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Vaka. Much of what I am going to say echo what you have said and what Bhargavi has said. First, let me greet my dear friends and colleagues from all over the continents. Thank you for giving this opportunity to meet and talk to you. Thanks to TCI for connecting us and offering us the platform for our voice in this warming planet. I think it is very important to link each of us who works hard in our niche all over the world, as working alone may be exhausting and more challenging than when we draw the lines to connect and support each other. No one should be left to face the burden of solving the problem of psychosocial disability alone. There is much needs of capacity building, which we can share with each other and learn from the expert, so that each of us can apply what we learn from TCI to our local context. In this dark world of discrimination, institutionalization, and violation of human rights, TCI connects the lives in the local communities and make a brilliant light shining all over the world. I hope that you are one of the lights that joins in with TCI, the global genuine voice of people with psychosocial disability. I met TCI when TCI came to Bangkok through Babu Trust the second time. At the time, I was one of the team who was compiling CRPD parallel report, and TCI connected me with a colleague from South Korea, Ho Yong-kwan, who had done the work before, and I learned many things from him that is useful to the compilation. And TCI transformed my focus from illness and treatment accessibility to social inclusion and other aspects discussed in the CRPD, such as legal capacity, integrity of personhood, data collection, employment, education, and housing. I have to say that capacity building is very beneficial to me, who is old in age, but young learner in this point. I later mobilized to transform my organization from an organization for into an organization of people with psychosocial disability. In fact, there have been 2 organizations in Thailand transformed, one of which is Living Association, which I am now the chair. And TCI has walked alongside me all this way for 10 years, especially as a fellowship awardee. The fellowship offered me the freedom to work hard for the cause of psychosocial disability. sorry, instead of having to spend much time earning my living along the way. And micro grants from TCI supported us to empower our peers and train urban gardening for food security during COVID pandemic. Hundreds of people have been helped. We also did situation analysis to get to see the points which we need to advocate for. We requested meeting with the dignitaries of the parliament and the government, and we voiced the networking with the private sector as well. The private sector helped many persons with psychosocial disability to get employment, both as a positive measure and in the open labor market. One of our young members went back to the university and recently graduated with honor in industrial arts, which make us very happy. The support and mentoring from TCI empower us to go forward, and we have been a strong voice for the rights of persons with psychosocial disability in Thailand, in employment, education, and well-being development. And we will strive to do even more. I really am thankful to TCI for encouraging national movements in the world to be strong locally and united globally. I see no limit to the work. I also thank Bhargavi for her leadership and the talented and hardworking secretariat team for their excellent work and initiative. I also appreciate all my colleagues in various countries whom I have learned from. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, dear Kim. Thank you so much for these wonderful remarks. I literally have no words to thank you. Thank you so much for acknowledging all of the work which is being carried out from the Secretariat for supporting the movement at the national level, as well as bringing them at the regional and the global level. So I'm really delighted, and I want to once again thank you from my full core of the heart for this wonderful remarks. And also like emphasizing on the capacity building and mentorship which fellows receive from the TCI Secretariat. I think that is the point where the change happens, and the fellows at the national level start focusing and working and mobilizing for the shift, and also based on the situation. Like in each country, the situation will depend and it will be different and it will vary, and the mentorship and the capacity building which a fellow receives from the Secretariat supports in building the movement at the national level and leading the advocacy initiatives. Thank you so much, Kim, for these wonderful remarks. Thank you so much. I will now invite, we'll go into a panel discussion now, and I will ask Fiza to spotlight our fellows, all the three fellows, and I will now invite our recent fellows who have finished their fellowship program cycle with us in the 2022 and in the 2023 cycle, like the 1 year span which they have already finished with us. This will be a panel talk with our fellows to hear about their journey with TCI and how TCI Fellowship has supported in building their capacity and leading the advocacy in their respective countries. I will go back to Kim's speech once again, and will emphasize that Kim, your vision, your speech, your remarks will also help the the fellows which have completed their fellowship with TCI to work on a way forward with us and to work and to keep working with the secretariat and seeking mentorship and capacity building from the secretariat to develop their own way forward. We have Samuel with us, a great and visionary leader, passionate to work for inclusion of people with psychosocial disabilities in Kenya. He has performed amazingly during his fellowship period and achieved almost all of the milestones we agreed under the fellowship related to advocacy and mobilizing with the movement in Kenya. He has founded under the fellowship, championing for communities for inclusion. Samuel has been an advocate in Kenya for the last decade, but through TCI Fellowship, Samuel got the opportunity for reforming the movement of people with psychosocial disabilities in Kenya. In this panel, we are also joined by Chinta Munasinghe from Consumer Action Forum in Sri Lanka. Consumer Action Forum is also one of the founding members of TCI. Thank you, Chinta, for joining us. Chinta has been able to mobilize rural, poor communities of people with psychosocial disabilities to return to their economic and social activities. She has worked strongly with the cross-disability movements in Sri Lanka for making the movement inclusive in Sri Lanka, because most of the times what happens, the cross-disability movement is working in one direction and they leave behind the movement of people with psychosocial disabilities. So in Sri Lanka, Chinta has played a really vital role in bringing the movement together with the cross-disability stakeholders. Chinta led a number of initiatives during her TCI fellowship cycle. We are also joined by Dorothy Nakato from Uganda. Dorothy is a woman with psychosocial disability and a self-advocate for human rights of persons and specifically women with psychosocial disabilities. She's the founder of UNICI, Unite Uganda National Self-Advocacy Initiative. And during her fellowship period through TCI Fellowship, she got like several opportunities to work in the community for our inclusion and also some international opportunities. She is also working on a research study for taking forward the policy advocacy works in Uganda by working with different stakeholders. So I welcome all of the fellows in this panel. So I will be asking you like 3 questions, and to which you will respond in the similar sequence in which I have introduced you. We have a total 45 minutes for this part of the webinar. So I would first ask, what was your interest in applying for TCI Fellowship? What did you see unique about TCI Fellowship? Why did you wanted to apply for it? I will request Samuel to respond first, then Chinta, and then Dorothy. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Also, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Samuel.
Okay. Thank you very much, Wakar. I have no words to express my gratitude to the TCI Secretariat, headed by Bagavi, Wakar, and the entire Secretariat. The main reason I applied for the fellowship is because I had always aspired to lead advocacy at the national, regional, and also to combine with other forces at the international level so that we can send the message home. Being a marginalized community, and it's a growing movement. I've been there for 10 years now, working at advisors and survivors of psychiatry. And I had just completed a fellowship from IDA, and the fellowship did not give me the much required capacity to engage myself wholly in the development of the movement. There are so many bottlenecks and so many barriers within the structures of WUNSP, as well as the PAN PPD. As in, I could not make an entry and have an impact in the organization. So TCI came at a time when actually even the movement in Kenya was dying. Since 2019 on the emergence of COVID-19. And we had built so much, we had done so much in the community, and I was feeling like it will all go into waste if something is not done to revive or to rekindle the efforts of this great movement. And it was timely that the meeting in Bangkok opened my eyes, whereby together with Elizabeth, we were able to sit down and chart the way forward. We had no idea how we are going to implement the fellowship because the organization that we were currently belonging to did not offer much support, or we did not have the necessary resources and the communication channels to empower us to reach the grassroots and build the capacity of other organizations in the grassroots for the movement to continue. So TCI offered such a great moment, great leadership within TCI. They believe in other people. They give us a platform. And within 6 months, not even 6 months, that was in April. By August, we already had the movement strong and running in Kenya. And we also participated in the launch of the Addis Declaration together with other organizations in the region. And one of the objectives was very, very well accomplished, bringing both TCI on board as the focal point, as CIC as a focal point, even by the time it had not been registered, but we took the courage and the momentum, and we were bold enough to start the registration process because we had the faith that at some point we are going to be the national movement that is going to carry the message forward. So I think at that point, I would say that the objective was met, and now we are already on the move. And the rest, I think I'm going to address in the other section of the questions so that I can give my colleagues also time enough to briefly describe whatever they felt when they are applying. I would also say that it was a great moment working together with Dorothy, who is my neighbor from my neighboring country, in some of the elements, and we consult from time to time on how to make the work go on.
Thank you so much, Samuel. Thank you so much for these remarks. And as you said that you are happy, you are happy that you got this opportunity, and on the other side, we are also happy that we got the opportunity to work with a leader such as a leader like you, who is passionate and keen to work for the inclusion of people with psychosocial disabilities and bringing the movement together. You did amazingly well, Samuel. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to working with you. Chinta, over to you. You're on mute, Chinta. Can you unmute?
Thanks to Vakar, Bhargavi, and all the TCI team for giving me this opportunity. I'm now a senior citizen, so I'm doing this fellowship at a very late stage. The reason I wanted to apply for the fellowship was to revive the consumer movement in Sri Lanka in collaboration with the cross-disability movement, because in early 2000, like, we were having quite an active movement with persons with psychosocial disabilities, but later it has been, how to say that, overpowered by the mental health professionals, not the people who are having psychosocial disabilities. So the voice of the persons with mental health conditions is not prominent compared to the early 2000s. And the community of persons with psychosocial disabilities or mental health conditions are forgotten, kind of invisible strata of the society. They have been excluded from the community activities, especially when benefits and entitlements are concerned. So the majority of the organizations of persons with disabilities have not included persons with psychosocial disability as their members, and no one considered a person with psychosocial disability as a productive citizen, but more like a patient or a burden. So added to that is the stigma that discourage persons with psychosocial disabilities to reveal their status. And families intend to hide such family members who also contribute to the exclusion. So that is the kind of context we are in. And then you all know that Sri Lanka is in a bankrupt situation and we are having a very high level of economic crisis we are undergoing. So that has also contributed to the 30% increase in mental health conditions in the country, and suicide attempts are also reporting day to day. So then of course it is, the model is medicalized, so it's mostly giving medication and that's it. And we don't have any support structures in the community to provide emotional support, attend to their psychosocial needs, and help them manage their conditions. So for me, this fellowship actually helped me to move around and finding these issues they're facing, and also discussing with the other leaders in the disability sector to work out how we should collaborate and help these people to come out and take the leadership and have their voice.
Thank you so much, Chinta, for these opening remarks on your panel discussion on your from your side. And you talked about exclusion. Like, yes, it is one of the biggest problem because we are known as patients, and identity issues are huge. So yeah, and it has been a huge barrier for our inclusion, not only in Sri Lanka, but in many countries. Identity is a huge issue. With this, Dorothy, over to you. Why did you apply for the TCI Fellowship?
Thank you so much, Wakar. And thank you so much, TCI, for giving us this opportunity. I am Dorothy Nakato. I'm a woman with psychosocial disabilities, and I'm also a fellow. I'm a Bridge CRPD SDG alumni, and I've been trained in the CRPD. And I'm really happy to be part of TCI Fellowship. And why I applied for this fellowship, person with psychosocial disabilities in Uganda are going through a lot, and a third of the country's population is experiencing mental health challenges. And Uganda is one of the countries in Africa that is having high mental health issues. And to that, 99% of the national budget goes to maintain the psychiatric institutions, and only like 1% is given to community mental health services. And looking at, there's so many other barriers that persons with psychosocial disabilities are facing, like the right to legal capacity. Of course, there are so many laws, including the marriage laws, that are depriving persons with psychosocial disabilities their right to make choice, and also the right to liberty. Of course, the Constitution is still depriving persons with psychosocial disabilities their right to liberty as persons of equal rights in the country. And also looking at also the other laws, like the mental health laws. Imagine the mental health law which has just been enacted in Uganda, Section 24 still gives power to caregivers for involuntary institutionalization of persons with psychosocial disabilities. Based on that, I realized that TCI is having a centricity on Article 19 for independent living and being included in their communities. And I got so much interested in learning from TCI how they are doing how they are implementing Article 19 of the CRPD. And also looking at Article 19 of the CRPD as like the center of all rights, as it gives power that a person should enjoy their rights within their communities. I really applied for this fellowship to learn from TCI. And just of recent, we have had in January, there has been a lot of allegations of what is happening in the institutions, and it's being published in the papers. And the coalition of persons with mental health issues in Uganda is coming up to is requesting police to investigate the human rights violations that are taking place in the institutions. So I really looked forward to see how I work with TCI and learn from TCI. And I have achieved a lot, as we will discuss further. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ak.
Thank you, Dorothy, for this brief response, a detailed response, I would say, and sharing about like why you applied for TCI Fellowship, and you talked about legal capacity, you talked about liberty of people with psychosocial disabilities. I think these are like one of the core elements and living independently in the community for people with psychosocial disabilities. We'll move to the next question. We'll now like to hear about like the works which you have completed under your fellowship cycle for the inclusion of people with psychosocial disabilities. What were the key achievements which you were able to achieve during the fellowship cycle? And what were the key advocacy areas which you were able to work with under TCI Secretariat mentorship? And what were the key areas which you which you have been working during the fellowship period? I will request again to go in the same flow. Samuel, you can respond first, then Chinta, and then Dorothy. Samuel, are you here with us? Yes, Samuel, you're on mute. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Akar. One thing I would want to mention is that by the time we were leaving Bangkok with Elizabeth, I had that opportunity of even meeting with a cross-cultural community from the Asia Pacific. And I picked a lot of best practices from their culture in terms of how they do their work, and in terms of the commonality, in terms of human rights violations, exclusive policies, because majority are from the Commonwealth countries, and we had a common colonizer, that is the British Empire. And so I would understand the responses. And one of the advices that I got from Bagavi, which he picked from a gentleman by the name of Agus, was that you can always approach institutions without necessarily involving those rigid structures, like in the Ministry of Health. And so I can say that I left Bangkok a fired man. And of course, together with Elizabeth, we could do consultations on how we are going to do it best. And that was reinforced by the TCI mission in Kenya, as well as the meeting in Addis. And some of the achievements I could say is that I first attended the second cycle of Bridge as a TCI fellow. And in that Bridge, I completed my policy paper on Article 13, that is on access to justice. I also did another paper on access to high standards of health based on Article 25. But this time around, I had comprehended what is all about Article 19 from the contributions in Bangkok. And so from the stakeholders that I had built rapport over the years, which was reinforced with our country mission, as well as from the influence with TCI, I've been able to do some trainings with site savers on on inclusion of persons with psychosocial disability in the thematic areas which had been left out. The negotiations are ongoing. We started with TCI being on board, and even now I have an appointment with the site savers leadership for a meeting in the coming 1 or 2 weeks. I was also engaged with Light for the World, training their trainers on inclusion of persons with disabilities, and also with the United Disabled Persons in Kenya, UDPK, which is the umbrella body of persons with disabilities in Kenya. And we are very good partners with UDPK. We also have Validi Foundation, which are also negotiating on access to justice programs. I would also say that I have been involved with other meetings with IDA under the TCI Fellowship. And I have also been engaged with training of self-advocates in the country. These are individuals and leaders from OPDs of persons with psychosocial disabilities across the Republic. And in the What We Need campaign, I was also able to consolidate and also to reach out from members who are in the training together and on the various activities that they do. And some of them are being engaged in alternatives like nature walk, poultry rearing, and other form of economic empowerment programs. I've also been able to partner with members from the autistic community and neurodiverse disabilities on capacity building and also in common training programs. I was able to launch a position paper on what CSC Kenya intends to achieve with stakeholders, and that was achieved in December 2022. I've also been able to engage the probation department. We are in talks on how we are going to carry out some of the activities, like we are doing a follow-up on a judgment that was passed early in the year. And those prisoners who are now being held illegally, and we also forming a stakeholders consortium to see how best the issue can be addressed on reintegration together with Validity Foundation on how they can be reintegrated back into the community, which is going to be a process because some of the instruments are not there and others are still not working. So we have already identified the gaps, and we are going to address the gaps now with the consortium on access to justice. Together with that, we're also going to address issues of shackling, torture, and human rights abuses by institutions, especially religious institutions. And I'm glad to see that Nicholas is here, who's a very active member and of CSC Kenya, and also very active on the ground and working in Kisumu County. And he also has an experience with shackling. And we are going to address matters of shackling together with some counties like Kisumu and Nyeri, where these cases are very, very rampant on the shackling of persons with psychosocial and intellectual disabilities, and see to it that access to justice has been accomplished. I've also been working with the Court Users Committee. Court Users Committee is a consortium of people who use the justice system, and it incorporates the police, the education officers, the court system, lawyers, and other stakeholders, also to address exclusion of persons with disabilities or lack of support and accommodation systems in the court system, both for the accused and for the victims whose rights have been violated in the justice system. We also worked on the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, whereby I trained journalists on disability sensitive reporting, because persons with sexual disabilities have been used as a source of humor whenever they are doing the reporting of these cases. So there is much more that we've done, and there is much more on the line, because you're in consultations with various organizations, and TCI is also on board, and we are also looking forward to the engagement of these organizations in our work that I've already shared with TCI, with WACA, in the coming year as part of our way forward. Let me hand over to WACA because the time is not on my side.
Thank you so much, Samuel, for sharing this. You shared a lot of things. Thank you so much for sharing all about your work which you have completed under the TCI Fellowship. Everyone who is listening to you or will be listening to you will request for a report now because you have mentioned a lot of things about your position paper, about your policy paper, about different initiatives. So we look forward to receiving a very detailed report from your side so that we can share that. We can put it up on the website so that everybody can have access to all of those resources. Chinta, over to you. And then Dorothy. Please mute yourself, and I will request take 5-7 minutes for each person to respond to this.
Yeah, thanks, Wakar. And under the fellowship, I was able to redesign the social inclusion approach of our own organization, Consumer Action Forum. So, because we were doing everything by ourselves, but now we are more on to collaboration with the other disability advocates in the cross disability movement in Sri Lanka. Then I was also able to sensitize the undergraduate, private sector people and organizations of persons with disabilities on the importance of including persons with psychosocial disabilities as a peer supporters, so they can be helping these people to come in. The importance to managing their own well-being and helping another struggling to come out from such conditions. At the end, we formed into a national network for inclusion with commitment from the organizations of persons with disabilities from 7 provinces of Sri Lanka to support persons with psychosocial disabilities to exercise their rights and address their needs. Also to demonstrate their abilities and capacities and to help each other So we were able to, like all the organizations of persons with disabilities, including Consumer Action Forum, have at the end have developed their own plans how to include persons with psychosocial disabilities into their work, and also how they could advocate for other service providers and the policymakers to involve them and consult them, and when they are developing programs. For examples, I can say one of the most successful activities that I have done during this fellowship was this What We Need workshop. We did with this, it's a cross disability kind of a workshop. So it was a 2-day workshop where they were sharing the stories, like human library session, where persons with leaders with psychosocial disability share their own personal experience to make these others to understand what the context they're in and how they're being treated by the society and what they have done, they're doing in their own ways. So that has actually made them convinced of the importance of including this category or this community into their own their own community, like disability community. The other thing they did was like together they developed very interesting posters with modeling themselves and design posters and messages for the What We Need campaign. And through social media, they share it. They also make their own banners and use it for their Disability Day celebrations. And then there were other organizations supported people with disabilities. They also use in their programs, and it continued to be used in their whatever public programs. So we got kind of a space for us in their own, in other people's programs to give our messages. So that was one of the achievements that I thought we have gained. Then there were also like between these organizations, like some kind of collaborations and interactive sessions through virtual meetings have started. Even without me, they were interacting each other and doing things on their own. Then in I was also able to like offer because first time in Sri Lanka, persons with psychosocial disability have got an executive committee position in the national network called Disability Organizations Joint Front. So that was during the fellowship, we got it, and it was given to me, and now the secretary is doing it. Then like we were invited to facilitate. I was invited to facilitate the Southern Province 2023 planning session with other disability advocates. So because the Southern Province want to make their plans disability inclusive, and in the process of inclusive interventions in the government services, especially they wanted us to help them because they don't understand why. They said very clearly, the secretary said, we are not working with persons with psychosocial disabilities. We only work with persons with disabilities. We don't want to work with the patients. But then after the meeting, and they were so convinced that they want me to help their officers or the secretaries of the ministries to make their plans more developed, inclusive. So I'm involved like kind of advisor to the Southern Provincial Council government administrative system. Then we also sort of started consultation for community inclusive interventions in Southern as well as Eastern Province, because another thing why because they were being called mental patients and they are belong to health ministry, and they have been only ended their life in the clinics of the whatever the mental health clinics. So they take medicine and nobody knows what they're doing after that. So it was interestingly, the psychiatrists came forward and wanted us to help them to develop some kind of community inclusive interventions like the way we did in early 2000, so that they are a part of the community and leaders of the community. So that I thought like it was a very good opportunity for us to do. And there will be partner organizations who will be helping us in facilitating this. Then I was also offered the visiting lecturer post in medical faculty of University of California to conduct participatory sessions with the undergraduate students, because, and also some private sector people who are undergoing certain short courses, which I thought it's a very good opportunity, because we can really give a message to the people who are taking lead in the economic and other sectors in the employment sector. So those are the key things that I have achieved. The greatest challenge I had was this economic crisis, fuel crisis. So there's a lot of restrictions while doing this fellowship. And the other one was my family commitment, because my father is over 90, all are above 80. So I have to arrange everything if I move around. And at the end, towards December, I also got depression attack again. So it was a bit difficult for me to struggle, but I managed. And I'm so thankful to TCI Wakar and the TCI team, who were really patient and supportive in throughout this whole program. Thank you, Wakar.
Thank you so much, Chinta, for sharing all of the work with the audience listening to you. It is really nice listening to all of those achievements. And yes, the policy paper is still awaited from your side on the economic crisis. Yeah, so we look forward to receiving that, and we pray for the situation of Sri Lanka, and hopefully the country will be back into its strength, which it had to be even in the past. So thank you so much, Dorothy. Over to you.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Wakwa, and everybody that is listening to us. I'm very grateful. Some of the achievements that I have achieved from being a fellow with Transforming Communities for Inclusion include the following. I participated in the TCI webinars on the institutionalization, and I was privileged to be one of the speakers on gender and the institutionalization. And I really spoke about the issues that women with psychosocial disabilities face, especially they are facing the double and multiple discrimination that is leading them into institutions. And a scenario of a woman where I also intervened, that the woman got in a mental health challenge, and the husband had to chase her away from home. Yet she had children, and she had contributed to the development of this family. And in that process, she became homeless, and finally she ended up into the institution. So that's how women and girls with psychosocial disabilities are highly affected and discriminated, and they are ending up into institutions. I also got a privilege to speak on the I was one of the speakers on the Conference of State Parties on the TCI side event on empowering organizations of persons with psychosocial disabilities. And I spoke on the on access to community support services, which is very key for us, and called upon all stakeholders, funders, and development agencies to invest more in community support services than investing more into the institutions that will help persons with psychosocial disabilities to live independently and be included in their communities. I also got a privilege to conduct a national public consultation on the institutionalization guideline that were published by the Committee on the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This was such a very big opportunity to our organization, Uganda National Self-Advocacy Initiative, because as we did all these consultations, we carried out the physical consultations, we had the online consultations, and we also conducted the interviews with survivors of psychiatric institutions. And we were able to produce a report of our consultation, and it was sent to the committee, to the CRPD committee, and it's online. So that gave the organization a lot of visibility and a lot of trust, and many other stakeholders joined Uganda National Self-Advocacy Initiative and committed to support their cause, our cause, to independent living. And also it gave us a lot of insight as we interacted with this guideline. It gave us a lot of understanding on what it means to deinstitutionalize persons with disabilities. That was a great achievement, and also it gave visibility to transforming communities for inclusion in Uganda. Another activity that I was involved in, we organized I was part of the organization of the TCI country mission to Uganda, and also our regional convening in Ethiopia. This gave me a lot of learning on how to organize events, as of course we had a lot of planning sessions, planning meetings, and also booking of the hotels and many other things. This was such a great opportunity for me. And during this, especially the regional convening, I was able to, as a group, we were able to prepare our Addis declaration, and I presented the Addis declaration with Samuel. And some of the key things that came out of the Addis declaration is about repealing of mental health laws. We would prefer to be included into the other general laws that protect and promote the rights of persons with disabilities, because for many times, most of these mental health laws are driven by the medical model, by the medical practitioners. Maybe I would just give an example of our new mental health law. As I already said, Article 24, Section 2, Section 24, and which gives power to the caregiver, maybe a husband or a parent or anybody, for forced institutionalization of a patient with mental illness as they deem right. So I have had an opportunity during the fellowship to hold different meetings with policymakers. We held a meeting with Mukono district policymakers, which was fruitful to us as an organization. That, of course, we had to share with them our right to live within the community and live independently. and shared the challenges that persons with psychosocial disabilities are facing in their communities, and also those who are being institutionalized, the challenges that are being faced. And so many people in the meeting, the policymakers, committed themselves to work with UNICEF to ensure that persons with psychosocial disabilities are enjoying their rights. And we are following up with that collaboration to ensure that we continue work together with government on this. And we have also strengthened peer support groups in the rural areas, especially in the rural areas, that we meet more. We want to really strengthen the peer support groups that will support persons with psychosocial disabilities to live within their communities, as we share challenges and we share achievements. Since COVID, of course, peer support groups had been affected because of the measures, and now we want to really strengthen them the more. Under the fellowship, I have done a study. I'm still doing a study. I'm yet to really complete it on the realization of independent living and being included in a community. Article 19 of the CRPD for persons with psychosocial disabilities. As earlier I mentioned that a third of Uganda's population is experiencing mental health distress issues, yet 99% of the national budget goes into maintenance of the main botanical hospital, an institution, a psychiatric institution, putting the rural population at risk of being institutionalized. And as also mentioned,
Dorothy, I just need to say that you're going over time.
Yes, I'm concluding. So even I'm doing this study, and some of the things that I have found out that, of course, government has not yet put there, like strategies to community living, to support persons with disabilities to live within their communities. And maybe to end with this, during this fellowship, I got the opportunity to be one of the Zero Project awardees in Sub-Saharan Africa on the institutionalization of persons with psychosocial disabilities. And I have been to I've just come back from Vienna UN offices to pitch UNICEF's solution to the institutionalization of persons with psychosocial disabilities. I really want to thank TCI for the opportunity of working together and building our capacities, and more so sharing variable resources that we get a lot of information and knowledge on how to lead our organization, and it has helped our organization to reframe our vision, our mission, and our core values. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. I will really request speakers to keep it short. We will have detailed reports from your side. So moving towards the last segment of this, like we have already got quite much of the way forward from the fellows, but just quickly, if I will request Samuel, Chintan, and Dorothy, like quickly in 2-3 lines in 1 minute, just let's say it's a 1-minute test. Your way forward after this fellowship. We heard Kim speaking in the beginning how she has taken the momentum forward in Thailand. So just in like 1 minute, if each of you can share the way forward of your works in your national context after the way forward after this fellowship. Thank you. Yeah, over to you, Samuel, Chinta, Dorothy.
Thank you, Akar. As you said, I think I contributed a lot on the way forward. And one of them is that already TCI is on board together with Validity on the institutionalization. And so it's just about rearranging and how we are going to address the issue and see the gaps in the Republic and how we are going to address them. And we are building other consortiums and partnerships wherever possible. We are still beginning and we are still navigating on the best way possible so that the impact can be felt on the ground. And that's why I talked about the different things our members in CIC that are doing, of which we are going to use as a platform, and also look at how we can incorporate the global movement on climate change in giving as an output by incorporating our programs into the global climate change programs. And maybe you are going to also to look at your leadership and guidance on that particular area. Thank you, Akar, and thank you much. Thank you everyone on board. And it has been a great time being in the fellowship. And this is a moment that I'll never forget as the moment of transition from the slumber into real advocacy for inclusion. Thank you very much.
Chinta. Unmute.
Thanks, Vakar. I am committed to implement the action plans they have developed during the What We Need campaign planning workshop. So the first thing I have to do is the registration of this national workshop and also raise funds for institutional development and then implementation work. Then, of course, the Sri Lanka mission, I would need support from TCI. You want to visit probably in August. Then I will continue to design the inclusive interventions with other civil society organizations, but with special emphasis on inclusion of persons with psychosocial disabilities. Then, as usual, providing emotional support and referral of host destitute persons with psychosocial disabilities for community living is another priority I tried. Training national network members in effective methods of advocacy and persuading, such as human library, forum theater, and silent diplomacy. Then participate in the national, provincial, and international whatever possibilities in inclusive planning sessions of the government level, and also sharing the good practices, learning from others about the good practices, and also share and document and share the things that we do in here through the TCI website and with the TCI team. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Dorothy. 1 minute.
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you so much. We are planning to use the knowledge that we have gained from TCI, especially to work with the UN guideline on the institutionalization and our policy paper that we are working on to go to move forward to see that persons with psychosocial disabilities are reintegrated back into their communities, and we have started on that, and then we also we are embarking on making sure that we work together with other organizations of persons with psychosocial disabilities that are operating in the country. We plan to have like a meeting together so that we share together these learnings and see how we move forward with this movement of persons with psychosocial disabilities. And we plan to collaborate more with TCI to see how we take forward these learnings and have their support, the support of TCI, to ensure that persons with psychosocial disabilities are deinstitutionalized. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. With this, we come to an end of this panel discussion, as well as the end of the TCI Fellowship cycle 2023 and 2022 and 2023. I really want to thank each of the panelists, each of the fellow. It was really a pleasure to work with you across the year. And we look forward to continue the works with you. And we look forward to working with you in the future as well. It is just the beginning, and we are working like together all the time. So we look forward very much. And thank you so much for all your efforts which you have been taking, acknowledging our work, seeking our support. And this is why we are here. We are here to support all the time. We are a movement of people with psychosocial disabilities, and yes, we will be doing a lot of hand holdings together for enhancing the movement in the global level and also advocating for our rights. Thank you so much. With this, I will request Bhargavi to announce our fellows for 2023 and 2024. And then I will request Richa to share the video. Bhargavi, one more thing also, if you would like to say some concluding remarks for our fellows. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Wakar. It's been a pleasure knowing, this. For me, it's a real sense of satisfaction to see how well the fellowship program is going. It's really the beginning of emerging and settled in leaders. It gives space for vision. So much came out of this sharing today. I have no doubt, given the Secretariat's excellent capacity to bundle this up into videos and share with the world at large, that we will be, bringing more and more people into our vision and our community of practice. So thank you all so much. Each of you is precious to changing the lives of persons with psychosocial disabilities worldwide. And it gives me great pleasure that we have now two more from really, like across the planet, I should say. Many of you will know Sarah Osborne, a young, fierce self-advocate from the Pacific Islands. Wakar introduced Bapu Trust as one of the oldest, but coming close to our history here in India is the Psychiatric Survivors Association from Fiji Islands. It's 16 years old. Last year we lost Luca Taveta, and one of his torchbearers, a young person, is Sarah Osborne. We're very delighted that Sarah, she works very hard, and her message is very strong and powerful. We hope that she's been with TCI a long time, and we hope that her work will be strengthened, not just for Fiji Islands, but for all over the Pacific Islands. So Sarah Osborne is one. And the other is Silvestre Barragan from Colombia in Latin America, our very first fellow from Latin America. Sometimes these stories move us so much, and Silvestre is one of them. He is with an organization called ALCI, Abolition of Punishment and Confinement Logics from Colombia. Really such a powerful message they give out in ALCI, and they're also fans of TCI, as they like to say. And we are fans of ALCI, so we are delighted to be working with them in this coming year. And so thanks a lot, Wakar, for this opportunity, and looking forward to working with all the old fellows and all the OPDs created by them, and with the new fellows who will go and create new OPDs, and it's all very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhargavi, for these remarks and announcing the fellows for 2023 and 2024. Richa, over to you. Richa, we cannot hear the sound.
Sorry, Vakar.
We cannot hear the sound of the video. Do you want me to screen share?
Yes, you're saying you're not able to hear the sound.
No.
Okay,
No.
give me a second. Tell me if it is okay now.
No.
No. Sorry, just a second.
You have to choose the share sound button from the more options.
From the more options.
When you go to the more, you have to.
Yeah, I did that. Let me know if it is not okay now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Richa, for helping me with this video. I'm really sorry for all of the visually impaired people who are listening to this webinar now or after the in a recording or on the YouTube channel. So that's why we requested Bhargavi earlier to share the names so that you are aware of our new fellows, and we will definitely add a voiceover and a sign language interpretation to this video whenever we upload it. So with this, we come to an end of this webinar, and I would really want to thank all of the speakers, the participants who are with us today during this 1.5 hour, and especially the interpreters, the captioners, the language translators. Thank you so much. It has been really wonderful working with you. Thank you for supporting us for this webinar. My secretariat, our secretariat team, Bhargavi, Richa, Fizza, thank you so much for helping me with this webinar today. Have a good day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you very much. Bye.
Bye.